Welcome back to the Trending Communicator. I'm your host, Dan Nestle. Has the entire game of authority building changed and we're just now beginning to notice? For 20 years, we played by the same rules. Get the placement, build the backlinks, rise in the rankings. SEO replaced clipbooks, but the logic stayed the same. Be findable where people are looking. But people aren't looking anymore. They're asking. They're getting synthesized answers from AI that's drawing on patterns of authority and credibility. And if you or your firm aren't part of those patterns, you don't exist. You're invisible. Elite firms are starting to grasp that those tier one media placements that used to drive referrals are now training the AI. Except the rules are completely different. Keywords don't matter. Context and credibility do. Earned attention, ladies and gentlemen, at its core. Now, I've been pretty vocal about the cult of top-tier media worship, and that big budget lines for traditional media relations is, for 99% of companies, a huge mistake. But despite my occasional hyperbole, that's not to say we should ditch media relations. Because when it makes strategic sense and you're getting context-rich coverage, then there's a clear return on the investment. So by all means, get out there and pitch. Well, today's guest is a case in point. She secured over 200 media placements in a single year on Forbes, New York Times, CNN. But what's interesting is she connected the dots between traditional PR and generative engine optimization, GEO, before most people even knew what the hell they were talking about, before most people even knew the word GEO, before most people even talking about AI search. She's lighting up the world of professional services, PR, and marketing. She's led teams at top 50 accounting firm, and now from the agency side, she specializes in marketing and PR for legal services. Named as a Crain's New York Business Notable Leader and a PR News Top Women Awards winner, she's figured out how to make experts visible to machines that synthesize rather than search. So we're going to dig into why Tier 1 media still matters, but for completely different reasons. Making her debut on the Trending Communicator, Marketing and PR Director at the Horowitz Agency, Stephanie Grober. Stephanie, very good to see you.
Dan, thank you so much for having me. You've had some amazing guests on this show, so I am truly honored to be here and really, really excited to talk with you.
It's going to be great. It's rare that I have a verticals specialist in some ways, right? Like I have people on who are, corporate folks or consultants or thought leaders, writers, whatever. And even the corporate people have been all over the place, but I feel like I share some really interesting ground with you because, I started in marketing communications working for a recruitment company, but focused on accounting and finance. And then, as a marketer, not as a recruiter, as a marketer. And then I was working for a huge accounting membership body, the AICPA, for a while. So, in that world of, professional services, marketing and communications, there's a lot of things that are exactly the same, like storytelling is storytelling, tactics are tactics, but there are some idiosyncrasies and kind of special things about services that I think a lot of folks out there either choose to ignore or don't know about or really don't understand. And that is, I think, one of the things that we both bring to the table. And it's funny, I see people's eyes switch off when I say I did PR for accounting, and they're like, what? Look, they're exciting people. They're cool people.
Yeah. That lights me up. I love that commonality between us. And having been a marketer for my entire career across various different industries, when I found professional services, that's the moment when I felt, wow, this is my home. I loved working with accountants, and I saw the impact that their services had for individuals and businesses. And when we're talking about privately held businesses, right, there's an owner there, and it makes a difference. I was at my accounting firm during COVID. That was a really difficult time, and the guidance that we were providing, which was almost daily for several weeks, if not months, that was critical. And then accounting and legal are similar fields. And I was thrilled when I joined Horowitz Agency, when I found Horowitz Agency, really, and discovered that there was an agency focusing in legal public relations. And it is an amazing place to be. I feel very fortunate to have this niche. You know, PR is vast. There's a lot of people pitching,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of people pitching a lot of things, but we have legal experts, technical experts, business experts, accountants, CPAs. And so we are so proud to be pitching them and to be helping them share their
Yeah.
knowledge, especially at a time like this, globally, politically, everything that's happening, the change, breaking news overnight. So it's an important time for our clients, and it's a really special time to be doing this type of PR.
Oh, for sure. I've never been fortunate enough to have a client or a company, let's say, that was already well in demand by the not just the media, but the kind of times that we live in. I mean, accountants are one thing. Everybody needs your accountant, but it's not necessarily newsworthy or storyworthy, until there are regulations you got to deal with, or there's changes to the law, or it's tax time, or whatever it is. But when your clients are all lawyers, litigators, specialists in different areas of the law, like we are a very litigious society. Anybody who, for those of our listeners who are outside of the United States, I am sure that you are somewhat aware that there are always court cases happening that make the news, and that there are changes to well, they happen every day, sometimes twice a day, but there's changes to kind of the regulations and the laws that kind of govern the land that you need good experts to respond to. So imagine that that's part of why you've been kind of so voluminous in your placements. Yeah.
It is certainly. Now, we cover more than 30 practice areas and industry verticals. So, just like any PR professional, there are times where there's not a lot of activity in
Mm-hmm.
relation to what you're pitching. When the lightning in the bottle strikes and suddenly there is breaking news, we go after it. And we've seen that, we work with folks in international trade,
Mm-hmm.
an area that I really wasn't following as closely as I am now, and it's one of the hottest topics of the year.
Mm-hmm.
There are trends in the capital markets space that make right now a great time. And if there aren't obvious trends, then we find them,
Yeah.
whether it's at the the ground level, the regional level, the trade press level. And so we're always making that coverage happen. But certainly overall, I would say the last 2 years have been incredibly exciting in legal PR. Our team in particular, this is a very traditional industry, as being
Yeah.
in having been in accounting. And so, there's some law firms and lawyers who maybe are accustomed to being quoted in legal trade, maybe an occasional New York Times piece here and there. We go after national breaking news across all tier one legacy media, but across every outlet and broadcast television. And so there are times where the folks we are working with are amazed because they've never had these bountiful opportunities, and some things that they may not want to weigh in on, but we're going beyond court TV type opportunities into Reuters, Associated Press, Fox, USA Today, CNN, CNBC, ABC, local stations. And so it's our clients take that journey with us, and it's very exciting for them as well.
It must be. It's again, it's almost otherworldly to hear a PR professional talking about how they're just going after the story. I mean, people go after the stories. Don't get me wrong, but you know, jumping on these national conversations with an actual kind of story to tell. Like this is the issue that I have with a lot of corporations, a lot of and even some agencies where it's this whole over promising thing and under delivering, but but scaled out to millions and millions of dollars sometimes a year, where you have a CEO or a leader who is convinced that their widgets are like so revolutionary, or their services are so, kind of differentiated, or whatever it is, that they deserve that time with the premier reporters of the world, or where they, hey, I don't, just call CNN, get me on, whatever it is. And we are too, I think, we've been too timid for years and years, or at least too kind of, I guess, well, on the one hand, maybe we see it, maybe some people just see that as a challenge. I'm going to get this guy into the Wall Street Journal. But I think for the most part, it's like, well, you don't want to jeopardize our advisory role here, long term, by telling truth for a change. And the truth being, you don't have a shot in hell of getting on one of these things. Like, this is not newsworthy. It isn't. And they don't know who you are. There's two prongs to this. It's new, there's newsworthiness, which of course is critically important, but then there's also visibility, credibility, reputation of the person that you're putting forward and the company they represent. And that the second part might be a little bit easier to build over time if you have a cooperative executive and executive team, and branding and marketing are working together nice and closely. But in general, it takes time. It takes a long time, and agencies and individual and consultants are paid for results now. So there's that sort of dichotomy that's happening all the time.
Yes, I would say, one of the evolutions we're seeing, and this is something we are all, all of us in PR educating clients on right now about, how and where we can be successful. Evergreen stories, those stories that come up every year. There's no room for them right now. Think about how much news, how much breaking news is coming at us. The news cycle doesn't even feel like 24 hours. It feels like
Mm-hmm.
24 minutes. So there is limited interest in your just sort of evergreen typical piece that might have run every year 10 years ago, and
Yep.
reporters would have a slot for it. There isn't anymore. And so that's a change that we have to embrace. Stories that we want to place, we will still work to place, but they have to land. And if they're not, cutting through the competitive environment, we might not be able to place them, but we might be able to find you a chance to weigh in on a breaking news story. So that's just one
Mm-hmm.
way that we're very strategic about our ability to secure coverage. I read something recently that from another PR pro that said only 1% of cold emails get a response, and ours is much higher.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm very proud of that on our team. It speaks to the work that we do, obsessing over the news and where our clients fit into that news cycle.
Oh, for sure. It's I think I say "oh, for sure" too much now that I've said that. But it's really, I'm agreeing. I think that there's really the expertise that you represent is extremely highly valued. And so, I mean, I kind of want to talk about that a little bit, about where, this expertise and visibility that your clients are getting essentially from being out there and being seen and heard by the journalists. But the journalists have to kind of know who they are first, and there has to be a lot of trust relationships in place for that to happen, and valid, legitimate, credible stories. How are you seeing this whole kind of emphasis on expertise changing, or is it changing? And do you think it's varying field to field? And do you think it's in, how do you think that the people who are experts out there need to be thinking about becoming more visible?
I'm sure it is changing. I think it's a credibility first play. So when we're pitching, we have the benefit of clients with advanced degrees, educations, a lot of different letters after their name, right? So that works to our benefit. But some clients have never done PR before. And so, you never want to put somebody brand new to this in front of, the Wall
Yep.
Street Journal, if they're not going to be comfortable or the reporter is not going to be comfortable. There's a lot of training that can be taking place. And that I think is key right now is we're looking at the impact of GEO,
Hmm.
generative engine optimization, and we're considering what earned media, what effect
Hmm.
earned media has on that. So, and then we're thinking, well, earned media comes from our PR. So, are our clients ready for our PR strategies? And that's where the training is important, media training, understanding how opportunities come in, making sure folks are responsive, making sure they understand what is expected or desired of them from a reporter. But of course, we never want a client to say anything that is, antithetical to what they truly think or how they would approach a question. But
Hmm.
all of that should be taking place now to capitalize on the PR opportunities that can then benefit your GEO strategy.
So visibility, building your visibility and building that credibility enhances your chances to gain coverage and to be received and seen by journalists and reporters and writers and authors. I mean, that's kind of, we've known that, right? We've known that forever.
Absolutely.
And it just seems to be accelerated now. You start talking about GEO, and we will get to that, believe me, because if there's one thing that we've been talking about a lot lately, it's GEO.
Sure.
And I definitely want to hear what you're seeing, or I want to talk about what you're seeing. But it's interesting because a lot of what you're saying is, okay, we haven't talked about how this is happening necessarily, and we haven't talked about the ways in which you are discovering what to cover and how you are preparing and all that kind of stuff. But on the surface, the steps, the process is very much traditional media relations, right? Very
Yes.
much traditional PR.
I think I'm
So
here to champion traditional media
and
relations.
and that's terrific. I mean, like I said, if it makes serious strategic sense to do it, then by all means. And maybe some folks go, okay, Dan, you're eating crow now because I've gone out there and said, like, media relations is dying and we need to let it go. But like, you have to have a point of view. My point of view is that for the vast majority of people, it's not worth the approach. But in your case, and in the case of serious expertise, having a bench of serious experts that are completely relevant to what's happening today, and that have a way to contribute to the story, not just a story to tell, but actually influence the direction of a story or influence the readers. I think this is a different set of rules. And no, I'm not hedging. Okay. Anybody out there? I'm not hedging. I most of us are not working in legal PR, I think that there are some parallels to everything for all PR people and all comms people. But what I wanted to ask you though is, you're outlining a very traditional, media relations approach, but I feel like under the hood, there's probably some differences from what you're doing now versus what traditional, media relations, might have been, or how people might imagine traditional media relations are. You've already talked a little bit about GEO, and we'll get there. So I'm kind of wondering what are the connections between technology, between AI, and the tools available to you that are either enabling, accelerating, or making your media relations process a lot more efficient.
Well, I would say first and foremost that PR is still very human. That is where I stand on it today,
Mm-hmm.
which again might have us on opposite ends of the ring, so to speak. But certainly we're using AI. And look, legal, traditional fields, professional services, there's other highly regulated traditional spaces as well. And they are embracing AI. Marketing teams in particular are embracing AI, right, for communications
Mhm.
purposes. Applications of AI directly within the practice of law are highly contested right now.
Highly.
There
Yeah.
are cases where lawyers have been fined for using AI, et cetera. But from a marketing perspective, there's less
Yeah.
risk there. So I'm sure most of us as marketers are using AI to save time.
Hmm.
Certainly to be clever, to help us write, to help us repurpose. We 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 aren't using it to pitch. And I'll say that
Yeah.
there are some agencies that may be writing their pitches with AI. We
Hmm.
are not. And that is a choice. We want to stand out as being authentic and human. We've worked with
Hmm.
some reporters who don't even want to accept written comments at this point because of the possibility that it could
It's
be
AI
generated
generated.
by AI.
Hmm.
And that's extending even when we're talking somebody who's a legal professional,
Hmm.
so um, we AI doesn't write our pitch. AI might inspire us or help us rework something, but it
Hmm.
doesn't write our pitch, nor does it write articles for our clients. Everything is authentic, and I think that's something we use to stand out at this point in our relationships with journalists. And then there are a lot of other tools too.
Oh,
Measurement tools are
yeah.
key right now. That's something um, marketers always have to utilize. Why do we have our jobs, right? What impact do we have on the bottom line? Even though we're a full service marketing agency, so even though PR is one of our biggest service lines, overall, we want to see a demonstrable impact on the revenues of our clients year after year. And
Yeah.
how do we trace that back? So, any measurement tools we can
Hmm.
use to that effect um, are always good. Seeing the reach of articles is always exciting too. And there's a lot more tools for just reach measurement now, audience reach,
Hmm.
seeing things on social, tracking trends. So there's folks who, while we're using some of these tools, I'm sure there's others who are way more advanced than I am. We're
Yeah.
using it to supplement the work that we're doing. You included, I'm
Yeah.
sure, are light years ahead
Oh,
of me.
I wouldn't say that. I mean, well, first of all, I want to clarify. I'm definitely not on the opposite end of the scale with when it comes to the role of the human in the relationships that you're building with the media. In fact, um, I am either depends on your perspective. I'm either the bounteous recipient or the sad victim of pitches all the time. Like I
Mm,
get pitches like I get multiple pitches every day for the podcast, right? I
mhm,
mean, I am not, and anybody out there who is using an automated pitching platform, I'm not saying don't do it, but I am
mhm.
saying very low chance, very, very low chance of getting through to me. And it's not because it's AI, it's just because I know that you haven't thought about why this guest is important to me. So if you are, if you're, if the results of what you're doing are hinging on a very human reaction and a human decision, you have to be human about the whole thing. Really, I mean, even if you have AI help you draft pitches and stuff, that's I don't think that's anything to worry about. But it's more about what goes out the door. You know, you can have AI draft things all day long, but who cares what it drafts? What matters is what you publish, and what matters is what you send out. And can you stand up and be accountable for that? And if the AI is doing it well enough for you, for your standards, then go ahead. If it's not, don't. I don't. I'm a little like tired of having the argument, and not with you, just in general about AI. This content was written by AI, so it's less than.
Mhm.
Almost always, it's less than. I mean, there's no
Right.
doubt it is. But if you have some people out there, and I'm kind of looking in the mirror when I say this, who are very confident in the fact that they're delivering thoughtful, insightful, valuable work, and AI is helping them to get it out the door better and faster, then, there's no, I don't think there's an issue. Transparency is important, but I don't think there's an issue with that. But anyway, like what I was trying to get at though with the traditional media relations and the use of technology, it's not necessarily the AI, using AI to pitch, because I would imagine, and well, I know for a fact from being pitched that it's extremely ineffective on scale, and it pisses people off, especially journalists who have no tolerance for that kind of thing. So I'd imagine you need to have a very strong human approach. It's the ecosystem around that. So when you think about your industry and you think about your verticals, you now have been in it enough to probably know who the people are that you need to speak to, and to really kind of make those connections. And maybe often you're connected by other people, and that's sort of the way things work. In parallel, are you using any? Is there anything that you do to identify opportunities, or to identify journalists or stories, or identify trends, watch trends happen, monitor, and I know that there is, but that's where technology comes into play more and more, and where more opportunities exist for layering AI on top of that, especially to help that analysis and to help that kind of strategy, and your media relations strategy, perhaps, kind of augment or enhance. So it's more about like the traditional. When you say traditional media relations, it's rotary phone, cigarette out the out one corner of the mouth, and martini in hand. There's that tradition, but then there's also, this idea that it's all like phone work, and, picking up the clippings, versus having dashboards and real analysis happening, like looking at your muck racks of the world and saying, we've identified these 15 journalists, and these are the stories they've written, and that's why they're good. That's why they're strategically important for us to reach. So there's a difference.
It's a science and an art, is what I like to say. It's what I say to our folks, who come in to start their PR careers with us. Every time we try to make it a science, it shows us that, that it is an art, and vice versa. There is something to be said for AI to help decision making. But then there are times where you take a chance and it pays off in spades. And so I never want to inhibit our team from
Yeah.
taking those chances, because the magic can happen there. There might be a reporter and you think, there is no chance they're going to cover this. I just don't think it's right for them. I'm going to hold the pitch, and it gets sent and it turns into a massive story or a massive
Mm-hmm.
hit. And so, I don't restrict our team. I love that about our team. And as long as, again, the relationship is there between the two individuals on either side, it can work, and nobody's going to come away,
Yeah.
annoyed. If we're asking a reporter, hey, would you take this? And it's not a risk for them, but hey, what do you think? That's way less offensive than maybe what you're saying, a sort
Mm-hmm.
of generated pitch that doesn't acknowledge that it might be outside of their wheelhouse, their typical beat.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
so it's hard to narrow down. I don't think that today we can be replaced. I hope not.
No,
Uh,
certainly not.
but
No.
we're experimenting, all of us, with AI, and
Mm-hmm.
I think there's newsrooms who are there's several newsrooms who are coming out and saying that AI is going to be writing for us. There's some who are coming out and saying that they're not. So we're going to see both sides of this issue.
Yeah. The newsrooms is a whole different thing. That's like which news organizations are using AI, which aren't. I mean, that's a conversation that's ongoing. And my friend Pete Paschal, who you might know, he's been on the show, is really focused on looking
Yes.
at the media, right? And it's fascinating to see how different newsrooms, for example, are, they're using AI for unimportant things, like unimportant stories, filler.
Right.
What used to be filler in print, but digital doesn't make sense to talk about filler. But you get this all this other stuff, and now I have a bigger suspicion or a more cynical view about it, which is that they're not. It's not because they want to provide filler. It's because they want the GEO,
The
right? They
content
want
beast
they
must be
want the
fed.
yep.
Yeah.
They want to feed the beast. And they want to come up in search. And that being the case, we can talk about if there's no byline associated, and it's pretty clear that the newsroom is transparent about where they're getting this information from. Again, on the surface, no problem with it. People have to eat after all. Companies have to make money. I feel bad for the folks who are paying to advertise across those platforms and don't know what they're advertising on. So there has to be a lot more transparency in that. But anyway, like I think that AI, AI is not a magic wand, and it is not it's not a legion of unicorns bestridden by by leprechauns throwing gold everywhere. That's not what it is. I mean, it's simply a very it's not simply anything, but it is a revolutionary technology for sure, with a lot of holes in it. And when there's regulatory environments, those holes are pretty big. And look, use it at your own risk. But I think that media relations in general, and publicity, PR, and the way that you're tying it together with marketing, because I think that's a connection that has to happen, it wouldn't be anything like it is today if it wasn't for the connection of technology, the way that all these different things are interconnected, and we can see results, we can see impact numerically through data. But it's meaningless without the human interpretation and insight and the relationships that power all this stuff. So I don't see any real risk of people who have both of those things being replaced. To sort of address your earlier point, I don't think PR people are in any danger of being replaced anytime soon, because especially now because of the new focus on GEO. But I think domain expertise is always going to count for a lot, and increasingly so, because because in the end somebody's got to be accountable for something. You're not going to hold ChatGPT accountable for anything, but they'll hold Stephanie accountable for things. And so that kind of makes me really want to go turn around a little bit and talk about this whole GEO connection, because even though the art and science, let's say, of media relations is a very human endeavor, you're trying to please the machines. Like there is a huge element of now AI being a stakeholder audience. So what are you seeing happening in GEO? Because I know that this is something you've been talking about a lot lately, and this is something you're discussing with your clients. What is the kind of the latest and greatest in the connection between the media relations and GEO as you're seeing it?
So things are shifting. I think GEO took the PR world by storm. I know you read and dissected that muckrack report that came
Mm-hmm.
out, as did all of us, and that painted things in a very positive light for PR people, the intersection of GEO and PR, which
Mm-hmm.
was great. If we back up, as marketers,
Little too positive, if you don't mind me saying.
right?
I,
Depending on how you read.
I laid into it a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, yes,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. As marketers, and some PR people may not have a more diverse marketing background. I'm fortunate that I've held a lot of different
Mm-hmm.
marketing roles in my life. So, I've worked in SEO. Discoverability is the name of the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
forever we've been needing to be discovered. So whether it was through SEO, which by now, all
Yeah.
clients are familiar with SEO, right? We're just talking about a new era of discoverability, but most likely the foundational principles that you've been working with and employing for clients are going to serve you well in this new age with a little bit of shift and a little bit of trust from clients. So it's interesting. We have some clients recently. We had a PR opportunity for a client with a website that wasn't what you would consider tier one media, but as far as GEO authority, has
Yeah.
huge authority because of the
Hmm.
way this site has been structured. And so when our client asked, "Hey, can you tell me more about this site?" I said, it is a very popular site. It's not the New York Times, it's a very popular site. It also happens to have a ton of authority for generative summaries. So,
Yeah.
and our client was pleased to hear that. So,
Hmm.
the way we're trying to navigate this is by satisfying sort of all media relations needs right now, getting
Hmm.
both the high level placements as well as some more maybe experimental placements and seeing what is affecting search summaries.
Yeah.
We play around with these summaries all the time. Personally, I find that they're inaccurate frequently. I see that, investigating,
Yeah.
digging deeper into competitors in the space. I know things are inaccurate. So I hope that folks aren't letting AI make their decisions for them yet today.
Hmm.
That's my hope. We're,
Yeah.
there's a lot of potential for this technology, and I think we're in the very early stages. It's evolving. The algorithms that determine what authority each type of content has changes from LLM to LLM,
Hmm.
changes each day. We talked a little bit about user generated content sites like
Yeah.
Reddit, their authority. I just this afternoon I read something that ChatGPT is no longer going to give a site like Reddit high authority. So
That's major. That's major.
right, I
Yeah.
mean,
It,
it's going to be day to day.
it's a that's the kind of thing that throws your comms people, your PR people, brand marketers, et cetera, into a little bit of a spin, because not spin in the sense of spinning language, spin as a sense of losing control of your life, because there's always like this evidence that, okay, this is the media platform that you need to be in order to be visible in, on AI or whatever. And well, let's restrict this to AI. And more recently, it's been the things that we've heard, and let's call them myths at the moment, even or unproven things. That number one, you're hearing, and we've heard, and Muckrat kind of put this through pretty hard, is that earned media is the most powerful force in the known universe for GEO, for being ranked or for being ranked, for appearing in AI related search. Number two, that user generated content, like community content,
Mm-hmm.
is extremely important to AI. And the third thing is that sites with longevity, that are already really that essentially have high authority scores from the old Google rubric,
Mm-hmm.
places that are already authoritative, also way heavier, especially conversational content within those domains. I think that third one is true.
Agree.
I'm not sure about those first two.
Right. And I think some folks were scrambling to build their own, user generated content platforms,
Mm-hmm.
portals, their own message boards to capitalize and try to game the system. Again, I consider myself a traditionalist in that I believe in the foundational principles of marketing, and I'm never one to to preach a buzzword or to put all my eggs in one basket for the next big thing. And
Hmm.
so I take a balanced approach, and I love to see when that pays off steadily over time. I'm sure there are folks who are,
Oh yeah.
amazing at overnight success, and that's their lane, and I'm in mine. But yeah, I think with AI and its impact on discoverability, we're going to see a lot of things shift. And earned media is not the end all be all to
Hmm.
appearing in search. It does play a part in it. Some sites you think would have high authority may not have as high authority as others you would never even think of. The fun thing for a PR person is we're not restricted. We can get in
Hmm.
virtually all of those outlets. So the playing field opens up for us.
Massively.
It's
Hmm.
a time to gain the trust with your clients to try some new things, some new outlets, some new avenues, some new platforms, types of media. Um, and that, you know, personally, professionally, creatively is very satisfying right now. You have to navigate those considerations with clients, hopefully, who are, not coming and saying, well, shoot, why aren't we on Reddit right now? Because we
Hmm.
in search. But again, the space that I'm in professionally is not direct to consumer, and so we're not looking for click to buy. The
Yeah.
the customer journey is much different, business to business a lot of the time, although not always. So there is a little more flexibility. I'm sure the pressure is on when it's a question of why can't we get them to click and buy our product immediately from one search, and
Yeah.
so you know
Yeah.
we have to sort of remember where everybody's coming from.
Yeah. It's also whether you call it a search or not. There's I think we start from the wrong frame if we look at it that way. Consumer brands, they want to appear in the, on they have that Google mentality. I need to be in the top 10. I need to be in the top this. And even now on Google, if you're in the top 10, you're still like way below the fold because of all
Hmm.
the AI stuff that's going on there. And I've never been a consumer marketer. Like I was always B2B and
Hmm.
services, especially. And one of the things I was going to ask you earlier was, why do you gravitate towards services? And I think you've just sort of hinted at it in a big way that it is it is it's the B2B side of this, and the fact that the audiences behave very, very differently, and you're not beholden to these sudden spiky trends. On the other hand, you don't get the glory of something going like, oh, this one got 34 million views. Almost never going to happen, right?
Right,
Almost never going to happen. But you do need to reach just the one or two people.
right.
So who cares if it got 15 views? If three of them were the right ones?
Yeah, and it's a multi-layered experience,
Yeah.
over time versus right now, and then let's retarget to them so they can't escape our product
Mm-hmm.
for the next 16 websites that they go
That's
on.
right. Yeah.
So it's a very nuanced, layered approach that we want to have, multi-platform, multi-channel, different types of content. There's referrals still playing a big part, person-to-person referrals.
Always.
um, you know, when we're looking at social media, we're looking at LinkedIn, which is way different than other platforms. Lawyers on TikTok, we get a lot of questions about lawyers on TikTok. Can every lawyer be on TikTok right now? No.
No.
Are some lawyers on TikTok? Yes.
Yes.
So, there's a huge range of applicability to some of these channels and outlets. But I personally love that about
Mm-hmm.
B2B. And again, like you said, maybe at the sacrifice of not being able to tout moments of huge virality or incredible
Yeah.
overnight sensation. If you appear on a talk show, Good Morning America, with your product, maybe your sales spike overnight, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we have had some amazing articles reach into the millions of views overnight with clients, and that's exciting. So for us,
Mm-hmm.
I think those are those moments. Broadcast news, certainly, when
Yeah.
clients of clients say, "I saw you on TV last night." That's always exciting. But yeah, we're not selling a product. So
Yeah.
there isn't that
Well,
measurement.
it's also important to keep in mind that especially now with GEO playing a larger role, or which even though we still don't know exactly what it does, we already kind of, you and I have established firmly, and should be no doubt, no argument from anybody else outside of this podcast, that the focus on earned media is a little overblown for for GEO. I mean, critically important. Don't get me wrong, a little overblown. And appearances in top tier media are not gonna suddenly get you ranked. But put that aside, it is absolutely the most important growing discoverability platform. And that discoverability is not about direct query, although sometimes it is. And when somebody's searching for you directly, AI shouldn't be thinking, if somebody says, tell me about the Horowitz agency in AI, it's not going to be, oh, here's the Horowitz agency. Oh, by the way, look at these other agencies too. Generally not going to do that unless you ask it to. Whereas Google will put your competitors' ads right on top of you. You can buy competitor brand words, competitor keywords, and so on. The issue, though, with the benefit of media is the accrual of authority. It's not the single shot. It's the consistent, drum beats, and the more context rich, the better. So where you're getting that story, you're quoted, great. There's a paragraph about you, better. The story's about you, holy moly, right? Mm-hmm. When the story's about you, now AI's got something to think about, because it's not about the keyword, it's about relevance, context, and something Andy Crestadina taught me recently is semantic distance.
Right.
The semantic relationship between the search and what you're finding.
Well, how were you referred to in the article? These are, we've been training the LLMs this entire time without realizing it. So for us, some of the ways our clients have been referred to, colloquially, now that's how they're being discovered in a generative summary.
Yeah.
And we're fortunate that, we've been doing that on purpose. It's sort of like SEO optimization, but externally, and if that's the way a headline ran, even better. If it ran in a major outlet, fantastic. And
Yeah.
so those are where we're seeing the biggest wins today for pieces that might have come out a year ago, a year and a half ago, that had a dramatic impact on search.
Yeah, and people forget that. Like, recency is very, very important, but it's not.
Yes.
But it's not really relevant to your AI search at first, because AI has a hierarchy of providing an answer for you, or finding the pattern match that hits that responds to your prompt, and that hierarchy always begins with the information that's already in the LLM, which means it's not the information that's out there right now, because then it goes to the web if it can't answer properly. But if you are quoted in the last couple of years, or if you have, like, if there are indicators recently in the last couple of years about a person or a brand, then that counts a lot more than people think. So don't discount what you've already done.
Exactly. Yeah. And conversely, if you want to pivot, that may be harder in the future too, and take some strategic work, because everything to a certain point, if it's been talking about you as a top M&A attorney, and you're pivoting your practice and you don't want to lead with that anymore, then you're going to need to make sure that you work on that with somebody, so that new content is coming out that refers to you in the way that you want to be referred to now.
It's not only new content. You think about the SEOs out there who have been, so focused on keywords and for many years, and it's well beyond that now. But when you're writing blog posts, or when you're constructing owned content, you're looking at the way that your customers or the way that your target audiences are looking for information, and you're writing to kind of satisfy what they're looking for. With AI, though, well, I mean, that's also true, but AI is going to look at the entirety of your blog history. It's going to look at the entirety of your body of work, or at least whatever's on that particular media or that website. And it will determine whether you are a semantically strong relationship, whether you have a semantically strong relationship to the search. So just like you said, if you've been an M&A specialist for 20 years, and now you suddenly go out there and say, I'm an AI guy, right? It is the propensity of evidence says that you are an M&A specialist.
Yeah.
And people who have more AI guy stuff about them will do better in the searches. It's as
Right.
simple as that. So you have to go back into your content, and ethically speaking, you should not change it. But there's a lot of unethical people out there who are going to go back in there and muck around. Start creating new categories, though. Start creating new categories within your websites, within your own content, and build those out.
Right.
Put out your FAQs that mention how you made this pivot. It's incredibly important that the things that you need to do to at least give yourself the proper legitimacy and credibility that AI is looking for.
Yeah. So a change
Not,
like that would certainly take work. Um, and I'm sure folks have experienced it before. If your
mm-hmm,
business moves locations, if your business moves
mm-hmm,
states,
mm-hmm.
those are challenges,
Yeah.
for your internet presence. Um, I think
And
we'll see it on a larger scale.
yeah, and like something was said earlier, there was another question I wanted to ask you about, about related to GEO. You were talking about lawyers being on TikTok, and I know I've seen lawyers on TikTok. I've seen, well, for the every once in a while that I check TikTok, certainly see them on Instagram, and there are celebrity lawyers. We know this,
Yep.
but there's a difference between being discovered as a person and being discovered for your firm. And sometimes, usually, the being discovered as a person uplifts the reputation or uplifts the discoverability of the firm, but the opposite isn't always true. Because you have to stand out in some way. But when you are working with your clients, and they're going out there, making appearances, or you're submitting bylines on their behalf, or they're submitting bylines, or they're on panels or doing podcasts or whatever. How are is this something that factors into their decision or to your decision making about this, or to your recommendations about it? Is personal brand, in other words, a thing for your clients?
Always.
Yeah.
So we always want to secure a mention for the individual and for the firm. We
Mm-hmm.
work for both. They go hand in hand. Now, folks who practice, solo practitioners,
Of course.
solo business owners, and again, being so steeped in legal and professional services, that's where I can weigh in from. They have a lot more flexibility
Mm-hmm.
because they know what's safe, based on their book of business, their personal book of business. If you're a partner at a firm with 500 other partners, there's a lot more risk. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot more that you have to keep in mind, and potentially, 100-year-old firm identity. So we always want to make sure that the two are balanced. We always
Mm-hmm.
want to draw attention to both. Each can have their individual identity, but our goal, just being engaged as an agency, is to support both. Some may go out and try to establish
Mm-hmm.
more of their own identity, and that's supported as well, because they do have to grow their book of business, as professional service providers do. But the hope is that your professional identity and the firm that you're with, the professional identity of the firm, can be complementary. And when
Of
they're
course.
not, that's when we see sometimes stories, as we have in the news recently, of folks departing, their firm for another,
Yeah,
that does more closely align with their personal
yeah,
values or identity.
for sure. I mean, the rules apply across any employer-employee relationship or any partnership relationship, where you are you're either representing a brand or you are the brand.
Hmm.
And those are different scenarios. There are disclaimers. You can say all this kind of stuff, I'm sure, don't always work because public perception is what it is. So, you have to, especially in certain industries, regulated industries, or hot topics, or very, hot potato items, whatever you want to call it, the controversial places of the world, it's very difficult, I think, to navigate those waters. That said, if you are a senior person with domain expertise, just building your book, let's say, of appearances and of content out there, if it's important to you to not disappear, then in addition to the media relations, you should probably be building out your own platforms. You should probably be on podcasts yourself, and you should as yourself, and you should probably be, start a blog. Like, everything old is new again. Start a blog again. We were supposed to start blogs in 2002, and then again in 2009. Let's start them again. Let's start blogs. There's so much that that you can be doing to defend against that invisibility. I think lawyers are like in a great spot for this. I mean, there's so much expertise that they can do. I think differentiation might be a little hard sometimes, but people want to hear what they have to say as much as
Yeah.
they make fun of them. I
We
know you're
have
not allowed to say that.
clients who've proven out that theory. Yes, there has been some hate for the profession, but today I don't know that we hear that as much because we need them. Uh,
It's always a
so
cynical, tongue-in-cheek thing. It's not like, I don't
yeah,
think it's like a real,
exactly.
yeah, yeah,
Exactly. So, yeah, our clients have certainly proven that out. And it takes people, it takes teams who work really closely together, whether it's consultants and in house teams, whether it's one person in house or 40 people in house. It takes constant communication, again, trust and relationships to make it all work, and work seamlessly. And so, while it looks like it might be easy, I can assure you that there is just nonstop activity in the background to make sure it looks that easy, even for folks who are in the media day in and day out. There's a lot of people supporting them, and
yeah.
it takes a lot.
Well, I know that all the all my friends out there who lead companies and who've been through all the roles, who've been in agencies, and who are legendary like media relations people, because I know a few of those folks, and you know they they've challenged me on some of my contentions about media relations, and I definitely have a much broader view of it than I necessarily reveal in a Substack piece, right? But I think it's really important to hear this entire your entire story here about really what goes into it, and it's not just throwing out random cold calls and hoping for gold. There's the difference between what you're doing and what I've been decrying, I suppose, as malpractice is that there is a strategically important reason for you to be pushing in this direction. There's also a receptive market. There's a market reality there that for every dollar invested in media relations in the legal profession, let's say, the return is better than for every dollar invested in, let's say, a manufacturer of wing nuts. Like it's a very different return on the PR investment, and I think that's what people really need to do, is look at that very carefully, how they're using their peso to talk about Ginny Dietrich for a second, to how they're modulating their strategy based on paid, earned, shared, owned, and where they need to turn up the dials and turn it down. Sometimes it makes sense to turn the the earned, and especially media relations up to 11. That's what I'm hearing from you. I think
Yeah.
and I think that we could use a lot more, I think, more understanding of where it's important, how it's important, and what the great results can be when it is a human to human business, when the art and science are mixed, and when you legitimately have important things to share. I think those are important points to keep in mind when we think about media relations moving forward. Or maybe it's just me. I don't know.
I think it's a great place to be, and it still is. And I think there's still a place for many people and many different approaches.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're fortunate we still have journalists to work with. So,
Yeah, that's
you
right.
know, that's what
Yep.
we have to be thankful for each day, that, we still have the media and can be a part of this.
Well, as long as you have good stories to tell, and as long as people, I think, really value insight and angles and POVs, then journalists will have jobs. Then there are the art of not only telling the story, but being a good writer and being a good reporter. Are there's wheat out there and there's chaff out there, and we need to sort that out a little more. But as long as there are competent, excellent people in any profession, there will continue. That profession should continue, in my opinion. Stephanie, it has been an hour. I can't believe it. There's a lot more. There's more I wanted to talk to you about. But you know what? We went. I think we covered a lot of about GEO, especially where you're taking it. We talked a lot about just media relations and kind of giving me some interesting perspectives to think about, of course. But I want to be clear. I'm not on the no media relations side. I'm on the do it when it's right to do. And I think for you, it's right to do. And before we go, do you have any last words of wisdom for our listeners?
Yeah. Embrace public relations right now. Support your media contacts, your journalists that you work with. Be grateful that we still have them. The media landscape is very, very difficult as they experience mass newsroom layoffs, start their own projects, support them in any way that you can, because we need the media to do our job as marketers, as communicators, as public relations professionals, and hopefully have a little bit of fun along the way as we're all taking this wild ride.
What a cool summary, and I think we need to frame that. I will find great pull quotes from this conversation, and I always try to avoid the last thing you say, but that was really good. I will give that some thought for sure. But I think you're right. We're needed. Journalists are needed. We need to really remember that. And what was that old? There was an old campaign, hug a policeman or something. I forget what it was. It was like, hug a teacher today. That's not really appropriate for most people. But Stephanie Grober, it has been amazing to have you on. Everybody out there, you can find Stephanie on LinkedIn. Certainly, Stephanie Grober. Her name will be spelled properly in the episode title and in the episode graphic. Or, check out Horowitz Agency, horowitzAgency.com. Legal is this. It's a legal public relations for the and marketing for the legal profession. But you can find information about Stephanie there, and it's a very interesting agency because we give too much. I think we give too much attention to these these horizontally broad large organizations, and we sometimes miss the great work that's being done by focused specialists. So check out Horowitz Agency. You will not regret it. Stephanie Grober on LinkedIn. Stephanie, you got to come back again. This is great.
I look forward to it. Part 2. I'm ready.
It'll happen. All right. Thank you so much.
Dan.